Hey there, my fellow author. I'm Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, an old soul kind of writer living my dream as a full-time author and authorpreneur. But I didn't start out living a confident, creative lifestyle. I struggled with the fears and the mental and emotional barriers that so often plague writers at all stages of their author career. But the truth is that with the right knowledge, tools, and training, you can overcome those barriers. I'm here to teach you how I've developed a lifestyle that's allowed me to publish 19 books and counting. Each week, as you tune into the Confident Fiction Author podcast, you'll get clarity on the steps you need to take to advance your writing career. Whether it's developing your ideal writing routine, tackling new skills like dictating your fiction, or overcoming the obstacles life throws your way, this podcast will help you live a more confident, creative lifestyle. Let's get started. Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Fiction Author podcast. I'm Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, your host, and today I want to share with you lessons from pickleball to help you become a confident author. I started playing pickleball just this year, and after only a couple of times of playing, I was really amazed at all of the lessons that I was learning about myself and my athletic abilities or lack thereof, and how the things that I was learning really do apply to my writing and my author life. So if you're not a pickleball player, if you're not athletic whatsoever, it's okay, because I still think you're going to get a ton of value out of these lessons that you can apply to live life well as an author. So let me just start with admitting that I am not a confident athlete at all. And that was hard on me in my young adult years because my brother, the one who is featured on 2 of my book covers, he's 2 years older than me, and he can play any sport. Baseball, soccer, football, volleyball, ping pong, tennis, bowling, you name it, he can go all in and be just crazy good at it. So growing up, I would find myself ducking and taking cover on a volleyball court or watching tennis balls sail by without me having a prayer of touching them with my racket. Or I would have to endure him playing, quote, nice in ping pong so I could just get a few returns in. Now, what does my lack of sporting abilities have to do with writing and pickleball? Like I said, as it turns out, quite a lot. So settle in. I'm going to cover several lessons here, and I may do another podcast on this because honestly, every time I play pickleball, I feel like I stumble onto a new correlating life lesson and writing lesson. Before I get into those, let me hop over to over a decade ago, and I was not a confident author, like at all. My stories sounded like a child wrote them, which was ironic because I was 5 years old when I wrote my first story. But honestly, I didn't do much to improve from that point, thinking I had to rely on how much talent I had. But now, years later, I can say that I am a confident author. Not overconfident, but I am confident in my abilities as a storyteller and in my grasp of the craft of writing. But I never did become a confident athlete. So when someone in our friend network announced he was organizing a weekly pickleball night, I took a big step back. I wondered, what is pickleball anyway? Is that a real sport? Can I get hurt, and how bad? But my mama, bless her, took a step forward. She was excited about trying pickleball. So I inched forward, wondering if there would be like some benches I could hide out on, like retying my shoelaces. But instead, on our first try at it, I did get out on the court and gave pickleball an honest try. And so what I discovered about myself personally and my athletic abilities after only 2 weeks blew my mind. I started writing an article the morning after my second time of playing on the courts, and it quickly got out of hand. I was dictating it, and it racked up to over 4,000 words, just lickety split. So I want to share parts of that with you because I want to pass on some of what I've learned as a writer over the years, and pickleball just pulled so much of that together for me in my brain. Now, I want to say before we dive in that to those of you with zero pickleball experience, like I was at the beginning of 2024, I'll try to explain some of the terms that I'm using. Just know you don't have to get involved in the sport to apply these lessons to your riding life. Now, for those of you who have played pickleball for years, please forgive me if I explain any of the terms wrong. I'm honestly still a beginner pickleball player. With that said, let's dive into the lessons from pickleball that can help you become a confident author, as I am becoming a confident pickleball player. Lesson number 1, keep your eye on the ball. Cliche as it sounds, above all of the rules, the paddle types, the scoring system, is the absolute need to keep your eye on the ball. When you're making a split decision about deciding whether you're going to use the forehand or backhand, running up to the ball, taking some steps back, circling around, if you're going to hit the ball before it bounces, which is known as volleying, all of those things are going through your mind, but there's literally nothing more important than watching the ball, judging its trajectory, how fast it's going, anticipating where it's going to land, and positioning yourself to hit it back over the net. With writing, at least for me, plot is the ball. It's so easy to get distracted by the mechanics and the poetry of writing prose or chit-chatting with the characters. Those elements are important when writing a story, but if you don't keep your eye on the plot, your story falls apart. And that's personally something I need to do with my story when I'm drafting a story, is really keeping my eye on the ball or keeping my eye on the plot. Lesson number 2, know where you are on the court. In pickleball, it's important to keep your awareness of where you're standing. Are you inbounds or out of bounds? Are you in the kitchen, which is the no volley zone? You need to have awareness of where the ball is headed in relation to where you're at and anticipating where it's going to land and deciding if it's your shot to make or your partner's shot. So there's a lot to think about in every play. When you're into the scene of your story, typing fast and furious or speaking fast and furious if you're dictating, there's a lot to think about. The characters, their motivations, the setting, and the purpose of the scene, which is to, of course, drive the plot forward. Awareness is important for an author because you don't want to get the scene or even the entire story off track when you're in the throes of a powerful scene and the words are just flying across the page like a bright yellow pickleball. You may make a mistake and knock the ball out of bounds. Once the scene is over, that's a good time to assess how everything went down. Did you keep the characters on track with the right dialogue and action that will advance the plot how you intended? If not, do you need to reassess the new direction you went that may have actually saved the scene? Or it may have gone in a better direction than what you had outlined. I will say it's best to stay in the flow of the scene while it's rolling rather than stopping in the middle to figure out if you should have swung higher on your last hit. Don't worry about assessing everything until the scene is over, unless it's clearly out of bounds. In that case, the play and the scene are over and you need to restart. Lesson number 3, practice in private and in public. As an introvert, anytime I'm in the public eye, whether standing in line at a grocery store or attempting a new sport like pickleball, I just feel like everyone is staring at me. And I want to blend in to the scenery and be invisible. So that was me the first time I stepped onto a pickleball court. Actually, just walking into the gym, I felt like everyone turned around to stare at me in my oversized t-shirt and faded workout pants, when in reality, no one even noticed that I'd even walked into the gym. Now, I didn't want to appear too beginner, so I joined my mama and a few other ladies in practicing how to serve in pickleball. And I was like, I'm going to try the volley serve I had seen on YouTube videos because, yes, of course, I went to YouTube University before even attempting to play pickleball for the first time. So I was trying the volley serve, which is where you drop the ball and you hit it while it's still in the air, versus the bounce serve, where you drop it, let it bounce, and get your swing in. So I was trying that volley serve and I hit air every time. So I quickly gave up because everyone on my court really was watching me. And I switched to that easier bounce serve. And that worked. I was able to hit the ball and it actually went over the net. But I still wanted to do the volley serve. The act of releasing the ball and hitting it while it's still in the air, just like the pros do it. And the reason why I wanted to is it went back to the mental blocks that I wanted to overcome that were created from the many failed attempts in my youth in sports. I could never toss the ball up and hit it in tennis. I could never toss the ball up and hit it in volleyball. I could never do the volley serve in ping pong. It was always that girlish drop it, bounce, and then hit it. So I started out just determined not to get stuck there in pickleball, even as a rank beginner. So after our first night at practicing pickleball with some borrowed equipment, my mom and I bought our own paddles and balls, and they just sat in the sack until the next week when we got ready for our second round of practice. I broke open the paddles while my mama and brother were working on a 2-man project out on our land, where we are actually hoping to build a house this next year, Lord willing. So I had a whole 5 acres and a brand new paddle and pickleballs and absolutely no one watching me. So I thought, why not? I took my new paddle out and the yellow pickleballs. I put on my cap to block out the sun, took a deep breath, and held that ball in the air. I positioned my other hand with the paddle ready to strike, and I picked a patch of broom sedge to aim for as if it was the square on the opposite side of the court. I released the ball and swung. Pop! Not only did I hit the ball on my first try, it landed right by the patch of broom sedge. Several practice shots later, I tucked away my gear with the knowledge that I could now volley serve on the court when we went to play that evening. And I did. I volley served with everyone watching, and that is now how I serve when playing pickleball. Writing a book or really any kind of content is often a lonely endeavor. It's just you and the computer screen or your phone if you dictate like I do. There are generally no other people around, or if they are, like you're at a coffee shop, they have no idea the fictional worlds that you're creating on the screen. There's no pressure to perform, hopefully, and you can take all the swings you need to get it right. But you can't stay in the pasture hitting volleys all day. You reach a point where it's time to go public and put your writing out there. Whether it's posting on your blog or taking a chapter to your writer's critique group or pitching your story to a literary agent, you need to get your writing out in public at some point. Yes, you'll still miss shots, plenty of them. But keep in mind you're simply practicing at your craft in public, and it will get better with practice. So practice in private and practice in public. Lesson number 4. Play with those at higher levels than where you are now. My second time ever of playing pickleball, I was hanging out over on the ladies' court with my mama and another lady. You can't really do much with 3 people in pickleball, so we took turns practicing serves and dinking, which is just practicing some close to the net plays. After a while, I stepped off the court to give my mama a turn with the other lady so they could just have a one-on-one. While I was standing idle, I heard my name called from 2 courts over. So our friend who had coordinated the pickleball gathering was waving me over. And I thought, oh no. There were no girls on that other court. There was another man that I knew and one young guy who could play any sport with mind-blowing finesse. So I reluctantly picked up my paddle and headed over to the guys' court. I just immediately started trying to wave off the invitation to play a game. I wasn't ready. I hadn't even played a real game with the girls, and past experiences told me I had no business on a court with a guy, let alone 3. But they needed a 4th player, and before I knew it, they were in position and tossing a ball at me to serve and start the game. So I did, and the game began. And just like that, I was playing pickleball, like for real. I played a total of 3 games with the guys, and my team didn't win a single one, but I was actually playing. And I was getting better because I was with experienced players who were several levels above me. Now, they did tone down their game occasionally, but only enough to keep me in the game. It still forced me to reach higher than the level I thought I was on. For the 3rd game, we switched up teams with another court, and I found myself playing against 2 other guys that I hadn't played with. And my friend, who was my partner on that first night, he cautioned our opponents to not underestimate Sarah, which really surprised me. And you may be surprised when you begin putting your writing out there. There will be critique, yes, a lot of mistakes to make, goofy air swings, and maybe some unkind remarks, which is unfortunate in the writing community. I believe that we should all be supportive of one another and cheering one another on, which has been my experience with playing pickleball. But there are those who will say those unkind things, and I'll talk about that in another episode on dealing with unkind remarks and critique. But as you get among experienced writers through online groups, at conferences, or maybe taking an online course from a writer who is where you want to go, you'll find there are those who are willing to tone down their game while challenging you to level yours up. If you're new to the writing world, you will find yourself hanging out with fellow beginners, but do start reaching out to those who are where you want to go. It's great to practice solo with fellow beginners to get warmed up and begin honing your writing craft. And then don't just barge onto the court like you belong among the champs. Show your skills in practice and then wait to be invited and then step onto the court and get into a real game. I'm going to wrap up with lesson number 5. Like I said, I have several more lessons from pickleball that you can apply to your writing life, and I'll cover those in a future episode. Let's wrap up with this one, and that is to accept critique. As a ranked beginner, I've been making a lot of mistakes in pickleball. And not even mistakes so much, I just flat out don't know the right way to do things. So for the first 5 plays or so in my first real game, my partner paused at the end of each play to instruct me on how to do things correctly, how to cover the middle line if I'm on the left-hand side, how to not hit a ball or try to hit a ball directly above me that's clearly sailing out of bounds, and then what position to be in when the other team is serving. During his short instructions, my old insecure self wanted to rear its trembling head. I either wanted to explain away my actions, which I did a few times, or I wanted to just politely excuse myself from the game in which I was in way over my head. But I learned to zip my lips, pay attention to the instructions, and to what the other players were doing. If you want to advance beyond the beginner level as an author, critique is vital. With that are the twin engines of suppressing self-doubt and restraining your confidence. So first, self-doubt makes you feel like you can never do anything right and that you'll never be any better than what you currently are. On the other hand, overconfidence is that lack of humility, which can lead you to believe you are better than you are, that you know what you're doing, and you couldn't possibly benefit from critique. So that's why when you're receiving critique as an author, it's important to zip your lips. It's so tempting to justify the reasons behind your word choice or the plot you labored over or that zany character that you find hilarious, but no one else does. Listen to the critique. The critique won't always be spot on, but going into it with the view that you can always learn something, no matter what level you're on or what kind of feedback you're getting, you can always learn something that will benefit you more than staying closed off in self-doubt or overconfidence. We want to be confident authors who can receive critique with grace. And so there you have it. We made it through 5 lessons that I've learned from pickleball to apply to my writing life, and I hope you will do the same. I'm going to just wrap up briefly with saying if you haven't played pickleball, it is a lot of fun. It's like giant ping pong or tiny tennis. I will give a caution because my mama had an accident just a few weeks after we started playing, and she does still play some, but she plays very much within her limits and her comfort level. I had another friend that I was teaching pickleball, and she also took a tumble. So if you are going to venture into this sport, it is a lot of fun, but go into it with some reserve until you get comfortable with being on the court. All right, that is it for this week's episode. I hope it was valuable to you. If it was, I would really appreciate if you would take just a minute to leave a 5-star review and rating if you feel like this podcast has earned that. It really does help other authors to discover this new podcast, The Confident Fiction Author, and share it with your friends. Share it with your fellow authors who you know are working toward achieving the lifestyle that they've dreamed of as authors. I will see you back here next week for another episode of The Confident Fiction Author. Take care.